Well, I didn't grow up in a Christian family. My parents were probably what you'd describe as hippies. My dad dropped out of high school as a senior. My mom right about the same time, and they got married in the early '70s, and kind of this very kind of hippie and drug culture, and that's kind of the context where I was brought into the world. So I grew up, seeing a lot of partying, a lot of drug use, a lot of things just that a child really shouldn't have been a part of. My mother had been dealing with depression for most of her life, and she would deal with that pain by popping pills. And so it was not uncommon at all for me to see her just very high. Dad was a pretty hard man. He very little patience. I know often if I was trying to help him with a project, if I did something wrong, reaction usually be yelling. I got cussed out many times by him, and so it was kind of a very fearful relationship. There was, I don't know if it was respect as much as it was fear. May 10th of 1989, all this really kind of came to a head. Mom had tried killing herself again by popping pills, and I remember hugging her that night, and it was probably the highest I'd ever seen her, and she could barely hold her head up, and it was just, I remember going to bed as a 15-year-old, just scared, felt ashamed, embarrassed, and it was about 10:30 at night. I heard my dad come home from work, and he probably didn't realize me or my brother were awake, and he saw the condition my mom was in, and they got in a pretty nasty argument. Now, growing up in this environment, I'd heard and seen worse than what I was about to hear, but in the course of the argument, I heard him say the words, "If you want to die, I'll do it for you." Then he strangled her, and I don't know that he meant to kill her, but she died. I drifted off to sleep. I didn't, like I said, I'd heard worse, and woke up that morning. Things seemed fairly normal. Dad was awake. Went away to school like a normal day. I'd forgotten about the night before. He called his sister around 11:30 a.m. that morning, and just gave the excuse that he had to take my mom to the hospital, and asked if she could pick up the boys. And the way my mom had been for so many months, it was pretty good excuse. So my aunt picked us up and took her to her house, and from that point we just never heard anything. Her and her sister went to the house with the police about 2 a.m. That next morning, which is now Friday, May 12th, and went in with the police, and they'd found them both dead. My dad had taken his own life with a shotgun. I cried the night my parents died, and I cried briefly the day of the funeral, and I didn't cry again for a couple of years. It was when I was 20 that I started to cry again, and I cried a lot. It was almost an everyday thing. I felt like God was picking on me, and so for about a year, I just completely rebelled. Against God, and didn't really want anything to do with Him. And about a year later, I was dragged to a Christian concert, and of course we're sitting on the front row, and there in the middle, the artist began to preach a little bit, and he talked about people whose passion had just kind of burned out. And I gave my life back to Christ that night, and felt like he was calling me into a place where I could help others who had been where I was. Maybe not necessarily gone through the tragic circumstances that I'd been through, but people who were still hurting, who still needed to know that there was hope.